Special edition of WEEI podcast today, as it's our Royal Rumble preview. Why is it the Royal Rumble preview? Because it's in Boston. It's on Sunday night. People care around here. James Stewart, joined by WEEI.com columnist Kirk Minihane. Kurt, how you doing today?
James, what's going on? Well, I'm here for the first 2 minutes. I think we're bringing in different WEEI.com guys every 2 minutes, right? Is that how it goes?
Well, Paul Flannery wanted to be in on this, and Rob Bradford has memories of Jimmy Superfly Snuka.
Sure.
You get anybody in this building, and they all have wrestling memories, which I find phenomenal. At some point in time, everybody was a wrestling fan.
Right. Guys, anyways, right? Girls, I don't know about so much.
There are a few females that I know who have been wrestling fans.
Okay.
And actually attractive-looking ones.
Well, all right.
So I think that helps.
Okay.
So the Royal Rumble with 40 participants is Sunday. Kirk, want to know, who do you think will win on Sunday?
Oof, boy, tough questions right from the start. You're a pro, you know that? I think if I had to guess, he's not my favorite guy. I'm a man over the age of 12. But I'm going to say they're going to go with John Cena. I think that's where the money's at, don't you? I think a Cena Miz WrestleMania main event has some juice around it, which I don't really see in any other WWE matchup at this point. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I think that Cena is one of the three people who can win this thing on Sunday.
Go ahead.
And I actually think, which plays more into the storyline, that you're right, that the ultimate end game is Miz and John Cena. I think CM Punk is the one who wins the Royal Rumble on Sunday, and Cena has to get through CM Punk to get to Miz at WrestleMania. And I think that's the story that they can build through the next 8 to 10 weeks to tell.
So basically what you're saying is they're going to make the prize of the main event at WrestleMania irrelevant by having Cena basically walk through the guy who wins it and wind up in the main event anyways.
Yes, because they've done it in the past.
Let me ask you a question. This is something I was thinking about coming in. I'm not the same wrestling fan I was. Say the Royal Rumble was at the Garden in 1999 or 2000. I went to the WrestleMania with my brother the year Austin won.
Yep.
What are the 2 or 3 reasons why it just isn't the event it would have been 10 years ago? What's happened? Is it Benoit? Is it just the fact that there's just one federation now? I mean, what's going on?
I think there's one federation. There's no competition.
Right.
I think it's a lack of star power, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you have competition, especially in the wrestling industry, that the stars are going to be created based on that alone, because you've got to hit your stuff and tell people why you should love me, why you should hate me. And there's not a lot of that. There are segments now on WWE TV that just drag on. TNA wrestling is a rumor to me because it's just so bad. And I'm going to get a phone call from somebody who's going to be upset with me for saying that, but I'll get over it. But that's the problem with the product, is they're not developing more stars. They're trying to push people who the fans don't necessarily connect with.
Right.
Or it's just they don't have the patience to wait for a star to truly develop. They would rather hotshot the title onto somebody with no build behind it rather than build the 8, 10, 12 months to that match.
I think, here's another reason, something I think of anyways when I watch it. When I watched it 10, 12 years ago, it seemed like it was geared to a guy my age, say early 20s, 10, 12 years ago. When I watch it now, which I have to admit isn't as often as it used to be, it seems to be geared to a kid 12, 13 years old. And I don't know if that's, again, is that a product of Benoit? Is that a product of the fact that they're a public company? I wonder sometimes. But to me, obviously, the show now is not, quote unquote, not as edgy as it was anyways a decade ago.
It's part of the PG rating. I think that they realized in the Vince McMahon world that they had pushed the envelope as far as they could push it.
Right.
And at some point, you have to come back down from it. And that's where they went to the PG rating. And when you have all these advertisers, and you mentioned it being a public company, these are things that all play into it. Eric Bischoff talks about in his book about how they wanted to match the Attitude Era. Mm-hmm. And Turner Sports was saying, no, we have sponsors, we have clients. You can't do Lenny and Lodi on TV. They were the a gay couple on TV.
Oh, right. Yep.
You can't do this. You can't do this. Meanwhile, Steve Austin is giving the finger to Vince McMahon, and they're progressing through that storyline.
Right.
And they're cussing all over the place. ECW was prominent at the time where they were cussing because Shane Douglas liked to cuss.
Right.
And Taz was meaner because he cussed. And WCW couldn't do that, and Eric Bischoff blames that as one of the many reasons why they went out of business. Now I think where Vince doesn't have the competition, he can go back to what made him money in the 80s, and that's this cartoon world of characters.
All right, well, I see you have here. This is what I like about you. The podcast I usually do with Bradford, so it's just a total disaster. There's no prep work gone in. We just go in and we just go back and forth. Really ramble for like an hour and a half. We go longer than any wrestler has ever gone in any Royal Rumble event, James. So I see you got. I like this. You have a sheet here. So what do we got? Let's go. Walk me through this.
Well, to go longer than any wrestler in the Royal Rumble, at least, you'd have to go an hour and 2 minutes, and that would be Rey Mysterio who did that.
Well, we're not going to do that.
No, we're not going to do that. We are going to, we're not going to be the Santino Marella / Warlord who lasted less than 2 seconds in the Royal Rumble.
Oh, run in and got tossed out?
Yes, pretty much. But we will talk about, and I want to get your take on what your favorite Royal Rumble was, and maybe a favorite moment that would tie into that.
That's a tough one. I'm going to go, and I hope I have the year right. When I was younger, I was always, as they say in the wrestling business, a mark for Curt Hennig. He came back, I believe, in the 2002 Royal Rumble.
Yes.
Late in the game. I think it was Austin and Triple H were in the ring. He came out, and this is what they'll do, is they'll occasionally toss you a surprise guy, a guy who's been out of the mix for a while. I anticipate I imagine we'll see that on Sunday, especially with 40 guys, right?
Yep.
He came in, looked fantastic, like he hadn't lost a beat. I think he did his perfect plex to Kurt Angle. So yeah, for me, I think that's probably my favorite Royal Rumble moment. And for me, a Royal Rumble is the pay-per-view I always look forward to the most, or did anyways, after WrestleMania, because it's just sort of an event. You can have some fun with it. You can actually, if you're with a bunch of people, you can game. You can do whatever you want with it. And it's the one where it's like it doesn't seem to drag on forever. There's actually always something going on that's always entertaining. So, I hope that they knock it out of the park Sunday night. I can't say I'm optimistic because I think the product has diminished so much, but this is the one that I think if they do it right, it should work out pretty well.
Well, and this is not on my note sheet.
Go ahead.
But the Mr. Perfect Royal Rumble, I believe, was in 2002.
Okay.
And he was in the final four of that Royal Rumble.
There you go.
And he was in there for a while, if memory serves. And again,
I'm sure it does.
If I'm wrong, then somebody will call and correct me.
Well, what did you? You might have talked about this earlier, but what's your favorite Rumble?
My favorite Royal Rumble is the 1992 one. Okay. That's the one where the WWF, sorry, Vince, it was the WWF then.
Careful.
Championship was on the line.
Right.
They had just taken it off of Undertaker and Hogan because of the disputed finish. Mm-hmm. And it was the debut of Rick. Well, it wasn't the debut match, but it was really Ric Flair's first shot at the WWF Championship. Mm-hmm. And he was the number 3 entrant into the match, and they said on the broadcast that he went over an hour, but according to my stopwatch, he only went 59 minutes.
Wow, you're like you're professional about this. I like that.
But that was my favorite because it had all the drama of Ric Flair essentially touching every wrestler and interacting with every wrestler except Ted DiBiase, who was eliminated before Flair could get to the ring. Mm-hmm. And it had Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan on commentary, and it was so over the top. And at the time, I wasn't smart to the business like I think I am now.
Yeah.
And seeing the final 3 of Sid Justice, Sid Vicious, Hulk Hogan, and Ric Flair, I thought it was going to come down to Hogan and Vicious for the title. And Hulk was going to win it because I didn't think that they were going to do anything other than Hulk at the time. And Justice eliminates Hogan. Hogan's upset because, as he said, "You've stolen my title." Hogan grabs Sid by the arm. Flair comes out, dumps him off. Bobby Heenan's going nuts on the broadcast, just screaming yes. And Ric Flair is the new WWF champion.
That's a good one. That certainly is a good one. And you're right. To me, sort of the last moment of childhood for me was when I found out that wrestling, not that wrestling wasn't real, but there was sort of a business behind it. And when the National came out, that daily sports newspaper they had, I think maybe it was Dave Meltzer who did a weekly column for them, I forget. And he would write about the business of it, and I would read it, and it was astonishing to me that this existed. I didn't realize it, and now, obviously, I don't know if it's hurt or helped the business, but there's no secrets anymore.
I know I've talked to Bobby Heenan at length about this, and he always thought that the magic of wrestling was that the audience didn't know how the tricks were done.
Right.
And once you tell the audience how the tricks are done, are you going to go out and see the magician now?
Right.
And I think the business has suffered because of Tough Enough and because everybody thinks they're smart.
Yeah.
And because Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, who I love reading his newsletter every week, because he's more of a mainstream guy, you get all these sites, you get Meltzer's site, pwinsider.com site, and I think that exposing, quote unquote, the wrestling business hasn't helped things.
No.
And it's definitely changed the crowd who goes. And if you do a quick Google search, you can find out what is being reported as happening. Mm-hmm. I always like the surprises. I don't like to know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I think, big picture in terms of wrestling, I think it's just a cyclical business. They exploded in the mid-'80s. They exploded about a couple of years later with WCW and the WWF. And I think they've sort of been been a profitable business, sort of steady since then. But, I think the next big star in wrestling, the next Steve Austin, the next Rock, the next Hogan, isn't even around right now. That's my opinion. It's going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now. Something's going to happen that hits with the public. And I think people will be surprised. You won't hear anything anymore about how, people don't watch because of the Chris Benoit thing, or people don't watch because they're all on steroids, or people don't watch. People just want to be entertained. And once the product is top-notch, they're going to come back, and there's going to be a whole new generation of kids who are going to go and start again and go with it. And I think that's sort of the trap that WWE is in right now, is I don't think there's a guy. People point to Cena. To me, he's not on that level with the guys who draw big audiences and sort of are guys you can get behind.
John Cena is that guy right now for the company, or at least they believe
right.
He is. And I think
he's probably the closest thing there is. So.
He's definitely a notch below Hogan, Flair, Rock, Bruno Sammartino, if you want to go back even further than that.
For sure.
But there isn't anybody because they don't put the time into it. They don't put the time into it, and I think it's a different era of TV viewing as well, where I think a lot of the UFC audience were wrestling fans.
True.
And that's why Brock Lesnar is the biggest pay-per-view draw going right now, because he had that wrestling fandom. He's gone to UFC. He tried to play football, but he's legit. He was a state champion in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who's just got this look that just comes at you. And, wow, can anybody beat this guy? And then when somebody does, you're shocked by it. And then you want to see the rematch. Can Brock Lesnar come back? And one of the other things that happened and how the UFC got the wrestling audience is UFC positioned itself after Monday Night Raw on Spike TV.
Right.
And people would hang around for the overrun. They'd watch this and they'd go, holy bleep, this is real.
You sound like Dale right there.
Did I really?
That was a holy bleep. That was a Dale moment right there.
Oh.
You just had a Dale moment. You all right?
I've worked with him for 8 years.
I know. Well, there you go. It just happened. All right, back to the sheet. Let's go.
Royal Rumble. Does anybody in this year's Rumble have the ability to go 60 minutes? And especially with there are 40 men in the Rumble, there are 90-second intervals, or they'll fudge around with that. But
how's that going to work, 40 guys? Is that too much? Is that too much action going on for you, Jimmy? Is that too much going on?
Well,
90 seconds?
Considering the fact that the WWF in 1992 had its first and only 40-man battle royal, and they haven't gone back to the concept. Now, WCW tried it for multiple years with their World War, and they did 60 men in 3 rings.
Right. That's right, yeah.
But I think what they were trying to do is they were trying to add that extra element because their pay-per-view buy rates are in the can right now. And having 40 men gives the perception that 40 men could win the Rumble, when in my mind, it's 3 people. It's John Cena, it's CM Punk, and it's Alberto Del Rio.
Yeah, walk me through this Del Rio kid. What's the story here? What's the gimmick?
He is a legitimately good wrestler in the ring. He's got charisma on his promos. He's probably similar as far as Mexican star power to Rey Mysterio Jr. Or Rey Mysterio, I'm sorry, I can't call him Jr.
That's okay.
So they're trying to build him. His gimmick is sort of like the JBL gimmick, only he's from Mexico.
Oh, the rich.
Right,
cocky.
the rich, I'm better than you. He's got his own ring announcer, who, by the way, is the best ring announcer that the company has right now, not named Howard Finkel.
I say better than Howard Finkel? How dare you?
Well, Howard only does WrestleManias these days.
That's true.
And he's got on WWE.com, Outthink the Fink. And Howard's all over Twitter, by the way.
Is he really?
Yes, he is a big Twitter guy.
Is he like does he tweet it like a lot? I mean, are we talking like a Chris Villani volume?
No,
He's
not
He's not
Chris
telling us
Villani.
what he's having for lunch or if he's going to the gym?
No,
okay,
but
all right,
him
okay.
him and Joey Styles are the two guys who dominate the WWE Twitter universe. But Del Rio's an up and coming wrestler, and I say wrestler, superstar, sue me. And he's just a guy who's got the look, and I think they think that he is the next big heel going.
Right.
And I think it's going to be him and Edge somehow at WrestleMania because the SmackDown villain side doesn't look very good right now.
Right.
And that's why I think if you're not going to go John Cena for the hometown pop, CM Punk for the I'm the villain who is going to knock Cena out because you've got to go through me to get to The Miz or whoever the champion is at WrestleMania, then it's going to be Alberto Del Rio because he's on that path.
Isn't a Cena win at the Royal Rumble, isn't that just, if you're in the audience, which you're going to be, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that just disappointing? Isn't that sort of the thing that everybody's expecting? Isn't it like the most obvious bad guy in Law & Order being the killer? I mean, do you really want to see John Cena? I know you probably don't, but, you know.
I like John Cena a lot.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. He won me over at the ECW pay-per-view where he fought Van Damme and lost the belt. That was the match that he got me, and I understand him, and I've had an opportunity to talk to him a few times and get to know him. And
so you've crossed over now. You're into that world.
Yeah.
I think as I put on the TV and I hear John Cena say like poopy and like, you know, potty.
Well, he got fined for saying a cuss word.
Yeah, well, there you go. So I think he, you know, for me,
they're PG now.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
To answer your question, though,
go ahead.
I don't think that it would be a disappointment because I think it's okay to give the fans what maybe they're expecting or what they want. And I think that their creative staff thinks so hard of how to fool people and, they won't see this coming. We'll be in Italy and we'll have this fan win the Intercontinental title.
Right.
And we'll tell the story later that Santino Marella was actually a legit wrestler.
Yeah,
and
makes no sense.
And you get that great pop for the moment, but then where does it go?
Right.
And the Steve Austin story is a fascinating one because when he was the ringmaster and being managed by Ted DiBiase, they were telling him, you got to do more, you got to do more, you got to do more. And DiBiase was saying, no, slow down, take your time. You might not get over as quickly as they want you to, but once you're over, you're made.
Right.
And that's something that wrestling fans appreciate are the guys who come from the bottom up, the Bret Harts, the Edges, the Undertakers, where they might have this monster push, but they're slow to getting there.
Yep. Yeah, even Michaels. I mean, it took him forever. He was tag team for years, and they pushed him as a singles guy. It's true. But I guess to answer your question from a while back, the hour-long guy, it's a tough question. Mysterio's in there. Can he do it again? I mean, I guess it's possible. He's older now. He's got a lot of miles on those tires.
John Cena last year went 22 minutes.
Yeah.
So they haven't had a guy go that long in some time.
Right. Maybe it just doesn't how they do it anymore.
And I think that's what it is. Unless they the joke is that if you were in the Rumble for more than 40 minutes, they were punishing you.
Yeah.
Unless you were winning the thing.
Right.
But I think now they don't want that. They want that instantaneous elimination. And I think that's why the two highest timed people last year were 22 minutes and 20 minutes.
All right, give me this, because you read the dirt sheets. You're on the inside.
Yep.
You're an insider. Like I said, the thing I like best
I think I'm an insider.
Well, that's fine. That's all that matters. The thing I like best about the Royal Rumble is the wacky, like, oh my God, how did they drag it? 3 days ago, this guy was working a a show in Nebraska. You know, at the,
like the Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah, like the Honky Tonk. He was working he was like the Jake the Snake Roberts working at the in North Platte, Nebraska.
He's retired for the third time this year.
Right. So who's the guy who 4 days ago was signing autographs next to Randy Robinson, and now on Sunday is going to be the 27th guy at a huge Royal Rumble pay-per-view? Who are they dragging off the scrap heap?
Maybe a Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Oh,
maybe an Iron Sheik.
Can he walk down to the ring at this point?
Well, it'll take him 4 entrants, but he'll eventually
He'll just get lapped by 4 guys.
Maybe a Nikolai Volkov.
Oh, these guys are 100.
The surprise name that I want, the guy that I actually think is going to be a surprise entrant, is Triple H. He hasn't been on TV for a while. They've talked about he loves the build to WrestleMania. The scenario that actually I think is going to happen is Sheamus is going to be in the ring. He's going to be doing this big monster thing and eliminating guys, and he's going to be the only one in the ring, and they're going to throw out these lower level guys. And the third one out, Motorhead's going to hit. Triple H is going to come out. Place is going to go nuts. He eliminates Sheamus ultimately, whether it be through the course of the rest of the match or instantaneously. And that's going to be your big surprise.
That's not bad. I've got one. You'll know better than me if this is a realistic possibility. It's Bret Hart.
Bret, I think, is waiting for a phone call to do something.
But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how fast it works. McMahon could call Bret Hart today or Friday or whatever and say, get in the flight to Boston. You're going to be in the Royal Rumble, the 30-second guy. You're going to work. I know he probably can't work long. You're going to work 3 minutes.
Can't take any hits to
the
head.
Somebody can just throw him out, or he can, whatever. And he would do it, right? I mean, but I mean, it does work that fast, right?
It does work that fast. As far as I know, they haven't written the Royal Rumble show yet.
Okay.
They don't know who's going to win or the order of it. This was Pat Patterson's brainchild of how to tie in all the feuds to everything. And I don't think that they know what the ending is yet.
I know people who are listening to this who maybe, I imagine most people listening to this are smart to the business, but those who may not be might hear you say, wrestling writers and kind of laugh. But the truth is, for a Royal Rumble for 40 guys,
yep,
there's a hell of a lot of stuff that has to go on. Now, obviously, they're not scripting out move by move for these guys, but they're going to say, you're going out in this order, you're going out in this order, and there are certain things that have to happen.
Yep.
Triple H would have to eliminate Sheamus for WrestleMania.
You would think that.
Guys
yes.
just go, and to me, that's sort of a fact. It doesn't get covered a lot. You never hear about it because I'm sure they're so private about it, but it's definitely an interesting part of the business.
And I think, too, that The Undertaker has to be involved somewhere. Now, he's not fully healed yet from his injuries, but if you're going to build to The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and really the Royal Rumble is the start to the build for WrestleMania.
Yeah, the next night always seems like the real kickoff.
And not only with the fact that the winner gets a title match, but it's also the fact that you can do storylines within the Rumble. Mm-hmm. And not to the degree that you once could, because everybody seems to wrestle each other at different times.
Right.
But you could have and tease a Bill Goldberg Brock Lesnar confrontation. Yeah. Because there's inter-promotional stuff between Raw and SmackDown, and
that's always how it's. I mean, that's certainly how it started with like Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior.
Yes, that's exactly how it started.
And they built it off. They were in the ring together, and Michaels and the Undertaker were in the ring together a couple of years ago, and that led to something even I think a year and a half later. Mm-hmm. So that is definitely true if you're looking for that.
And wrestling fans remember.
Oh, they have great memories of that stuff.
As much as Vince likes to think that we don't remember these things, we do.
Sure.
And play into it.
It's a big payoff.
There's a huge payoff. People know, well, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but a majority of wrestling fans know their wrestling history. They know it. They know the names. They know the storylines because they care.
Sure.
And that's to Vince's credit for developing these great characters.
Yep, I agree.
So what do you think about The Miz?
Well, I'll tell you. My younger brother, here's something for you. My younger brother actually dated for a while one of the girls who was on The Real World with that Miz guy.
Yep.
This girl, Lori, who was on there. And she always said that he was a great guy, terrific guy, like really smart. And all she talked about, and I didn't watch that Real World, was how much he loved wrestling. He loved it. And from where he's gone to where he is now is unbelievable. But I heard him on a podcast with Bill Simmons a while ago. And you could tell this is a guy who is really cherishing, really loves and is cherishing the position he's at. And to me, he is easily the most entertaining character when I watch Raw right now. He makes a feud with Jerry Lawler look interesting, which is, death usually. I mean, talk about a guy who's in his 60s probably.
No, the fans love Jerry Lawler. He's 61.
But I'm saying this is a guy he's not going to win the WWE championship. But this guy manages to make it seem legit, and he's such a chicken bleep heel that you believe that Lawler can beat him, and he's so comfortable with being that level, that kind of heel. That's a real talent, and I think he's a great character, and I think Cena versus a really preening evil Miz is a great lead up, and to me is a money move at WrestleMania.
And I think that they've done a lot of good with John Cena, where he was getting kind of that mixed reaction for a long time.
Yeah.
And now over the past year, they've really put him in there with some scumbags.
Yeah.
And you've had the Nexus angle with Wade Barrett.
Right.
You've now got CM Punk in the equation. They've really done a good job of protecting their franchise good guy. And I was critical of them at the time for not fully putting the John Cena heel out there like they wanted to do, but they were scared to do it. And I understand why they're scared to do it, because
it's tough business.
They're a sports entertainment company. They're not a wrestling company, so they care more about Christmas merchandise than they do.
Sure. Yeah, it's just the way it is.
And that's how the business of Vince works. He thinks of the dolls and the figures and the T-shirts and the DVDs rather than my fans are going to be angry when I turn this. Although they didn't think that through when Steve Austin turned heel years ago. But that's another podcast.
It's a different world then too. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It's, honestly, it's always been that way. If you watch the old WWF primetime when we were younger, the host desk was stuffed with toys, and you didn't think about it back then, but it was a subtle way of telling you that, and that's exactly right. That's who Vince McMahon is.
So you think John Cena's going to win the Royal Rumble?
I do.
I think CM Punk's going to win the Royal Rumble.
There you go.
Who's going to come out of this match better than they were going in?
Public perception wise, you mean, or in terms of what does that mean?
It means if Sheamus were to have the 10 elimination Rumble.
Right.
Where he just goes in there, cleans house, and they really put a focus on him.
Okay, you're saying who's going to get the push after this? What performance is going to lead to a push?
Could it be a Drew McIntyre? Could it be a Mark Henry?
All right, boy.
Could it be...
They're still dragging Mark Henry, giving them push after push after push. I actually like Wade Barrett. I don't know how you feel about him. I'm entertained by Wade Barrett. I like his look. I like his attitude. I would like to see. I know he's been pushed to the moon here in the past few months, but I'd like to see it continue. Maybe he'll do something here.
I like Wade Barrett a lot. I think he was a very good leader of the Nexus. Now they've moved him to SmackDown as part of this core group,
right?
Which is Nexus 2, as it's been portrayed through the Twitter world. But I like Wade Barrett a lot. I'm of the opinion that Sheamus is the one who's going to get the really big knockout push. I think John Morrison might get that Iron Man push that we talked about them not. Talked about them not having a guy going more than 22 minutes last year. Yep. Maybe he's a guy who goes 30 minutes. But I think overall, while there's not a lot of top star power, I think it's going to be a fun Royal Rumble matchup because of the 40-man element and because there are a lot of different equations that could happen here.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I will not be there as you will be Sunday night, but I will be purchasing it and watching the event.
My hope, though, is that the Berserker does not win
the Royal
Rumble.
You don't think that's going to happen?
No, but he did win that 1992 Battle Royal of 40 men that I mentioned before.
There you go. Yeah, I would say that's probably not going to happen.
Kirk Minihane of WEEI.com has been my guest on this very special edition of WEEI Podcast, our Royal Rumble preview. Joining us on the AT&T hotline is Tim Weisberg, our wrestling insider from the New Bedford Standard Times. Tim, how are you?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Doing well. We've got the big WWE Royal Rumble coming up this Sunday night, and I want to get your take on your potential favorites to win this match.
Well, I got to say, coming right out of the gate, the favorite would have to be John Cena. Mainly because it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, Cena's been away from the title for a while, and he's still been a featured player in WWE programming. And the fact that it's in Boston, which we consider to be John Cena's hometown, that definitely plays into Vince McMahon's send the fans home happy theory at pay-per-views. The only problem with that, though, is you have to look beyond the Rumble itself and look to what the storyline is going into WrestleMania. And with this feud between John Cena and CM Punk heating up, I think that's too good to let that fall by the wayside just to put Cena into a title match at WrestleMania.
And I actually think that my pick to win is CM Punk for the reasons that you stated. And while John Cena, I think, will ultimately get to face The Miz at WrestleMania, for storyline's sake, CM Punk almost has to win this match to give John Cena somebody else to chase before he gets to The Miz.
Well, the good thing, too, about the Cena CM Punk kind of sideline to the main event is no matter what happens, it's going to build the Miz's credibility heading into WrestleMania. It's going to build the credibility of CM Punk to have these guys kind of hovering around John Cena, even though we've seen both of these guys. I mean, obviously the Miz is the champion right now, and Punk's held the title before, but they're not considered those elite level main event at WrestleMania type of guys. And maybe hanging around with Cena for the next few months will make them into that.
And certainly CM Punk has evolved and become more than just that Ring of Honor star. But another guy who is in the process of becoming a big star is Alberto Del Rio. And he's being featured on both shows recently. And he really, to me, is the third person who's got a legitimate shot of winning this match and going on and being in the main event at WrestleMania. Your thoughts on Alberto Del Rio?
Well, the main reason I like the idea of Del Rio winning it is because SmackDown really doesn't have anything going on right now. They're booking their show based on Raw leftovers and kind of these Raw special appearances. And so they really need a major headline feud heading into WrestleMania. And Alberto Del Rio seems to have, exactly what it takes to be a main event talent. You're seeing a lot of these up-and-coming guys on SmackDown getting more and more opportunities. Guys like Drew McIntyre is rising up through the ranks. These guys who we've seen in the shadows, Dolph Ziggler, who are now starting to break out. But Del Rio has a pedigree, outside of the WWE. And this is a guy who, to Mexican wrestling fans, is as big a star as Rey Mysterio. So this is a guy who, if you put him into the headline spot, he could win over a lot of fans along the way.
He also has the best ring announcer in the business right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the fact that he looks like he looks like a guy who shouldn't have the voice that he does makes it even better.
40 men in the Royal Rumble. They're not going to announce everyone, and that's part of the mystique of the Royal Rumble is you don't know who might show up at any time. Any surprises that you think might happen or you're hearing might happen?
My one big surprise, and I'm feeling kind of down in my gut, and I haven't really heard anything about this, but I'm just kind of putting, everything together, is I would not be surprised to see a Triple H appearance. Whether or not Triple H is 100% and whether or not he's ready to wrestle a full-time schedule, if he even plans on doing that. I mean, from everything that I've read, his plan now is to kind of wind down and be more of, in his words, a featured attraction. He's going to be somebody who wrestles from time to time and doesn't want to carry a storyline. That being said, this would be a great time to bring him back, put him in this Royal Rumble out of nowhere, and then have him win the event and set up eventually that Randy Orton, Triple H main event at WrestleMania that they've wanted to happen for so long. When they tried to put those two in the main event before, for some reason Randy Orton wasn't at the peak of his popularity yet. Triple H had been kind of in the middle. I think if you do a clear-cut, Randy Orton, Triple H program for the next 3 months, it would definitely get a lot of attention, and it would also help bolster the appreciation for Triple H, the actor, now that his new film, The Chaperone, is going to be debuting in February.
I want to run a scenario by you for the Royal Rumble because usually they have one spot for somebody who clears the ring of everybody, and then they do entrant after entrant, and then the big entrant hits. And this is my scenario for them bringing back Triple H on Sunday, is it's King Sheamus who's in the ring. Sheamus was the one who knocked Triple H out of action. It would be a surprise. It would spark the crowd. And I actually think that they are going to be in a feud heading into WrestleMania.
Well, that would be excellent. I mean, that would be the perfect dramatic moment for his return. there has to be some Triple H involvement in WrestleMania, because let's face it, the entire world knows that if Shawn Michaels is going into the Hall of Fame, then it'll be Triple H that inducts him. So he's going to be back in some form or fashion, and why not do it in that type of scenario? And I think that's a great idea. And also, what it does is it gives Sheamus the ability to be that guy that goes in and clears the ring, which kind of keeps him in the spotlight, because I think this King Sheamus gimmick has kind of let him fall by the wayside.
What do you think of The Miz as the WWE champion?
You know, when I first saw him win the title, I was like, oh my God, this is not going to go well. The words transitional champion definitely popped into my head, and I expected him to, hold on to it for a week at the most. But I got to say, I love him as the champion. I liked the character before, but I wasn't completely sold on it. But since they put the title on him, it's just even more than I imagined he was ever capable of. So big ups to Mike Mizanin for basically sticking with the same character all these years and just waiting for it to fit.
Do you think they've dropped the ball with not having Miz versus Jerry Lawler as a pay-per-view match?
No, I don't think so. I think that was kind of one of those things where it was a one-night deal. It was kind of just the idea of putting The Miz into a match with somebody who didn't really have credibility to win the title in a long program. It's one of those fluke nights that they have, like supposedly the original Mick Foley championship was supposed to be. But it's the opportunity to kind of just throw somebody out there who's a respected opponent, but really doesn't affect any storylines any. But what ended up happening is the fans got totally behind the Lawler idea, and I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we see kind of like a Betty White on Saturday Night Live thing, where the fans push for Jerry Lawler to eventually get at least a brief title run.
Is that something that the WWE seems to drop the ball on, is riding the hot hand of what the fans seem to believe in?
The biggest problem that I've noticed, especially in the last few years, and I don't know if that has to do with who's involved in the booking now or just the fact that they're so conscious of what's going on outside of the company now, it doesn't seem like they book for the fans anymore. It seems more like they book with what Vince McMahon wants to do, and he's telling you what you're going to like. And they got away from what made them successful in the 90s, where it was, a slow build to what everybody wanted to see happen.
Dolph Ziggler, his career seems to be hinging on this one match on Sunday and where he goes, whether he goes further to a main event push or whether he ends up in what I like to call the John Morrison role. Good enough to play with the big boys, but doesn't seem at this point where he's got enough oomph on him to go and beat the big boys. What's your overall impression on Dolph Ziggler, and does he have a chance to have a phenomenal match with the world champion of SmackDown, Edge?
Well, I'll say one thing, too, before I get into that answer. John Morrison is definitely a star on the rise in the company. I think that this is a guy who, by SummerSlam, you're going to see being a big-time player. But getting back to Dolph Ziggler, when I first heard the name, I said, there's a guy that will never make it. And here he is, fighting in a championship match. What bothers me about this is Ziggler and Edge have been booked in house shows in different scenarios, tag matches, things like that. And basically they had to scrap all those plans and give them as much one-on-one action as they could, because I guess they feel like this match has a lot of potential for disaster. So depending on what his performance is, obviously Edge being the fan favorite now, how weird is that to say? But there's no chance that Ziggler's going to win this match, but there has to be some compelling reason for him to stay in the spotlight and not make him a one-and-done guy, because SmackDown is kind of devoid of big-time heels.
I actually agree with your point on John Morrison, and it's unfortunate that they can't find a way to make him break through that glass ceiling. He had a phenomenal match with The Miz a few weeks ago on Raw, and I thought that would be the springboard point for him to take it to the next level and him have a rematch on the Royal Rumble, but they decided to go another way with John Morrison.
Well, the biggest problem is, once again, Vince is falling into that hole where, these guys with the alternative styles, they don't really get the push that they should, and he instead, books for the monsters. He books for guys like Sheamus. He books for guys like Big Show to come out and have these dominating performances, and there's not enough focus put on the smaller athletic guys.
Do we see The Undertaker at the Rumble on Sunday?
He's got to come back at some point, and it's as good a place as any. There's talk now about when The Undertaker comes back, they're going to be putting him with somebody else, kind of developing a new talent alongside of him. I'm wondering just how much further can you really take that storyline? As much as everybody loves to see the guy come back out and dominate, it's only a matter of time before people realize he's closer to 50 than he is to 40. And when that happens, usually guys can't be long-term main eventers anymore.
Tim Weisberg, he's our wrestling insider from the New Bedford Standard Times. Thank you for the time.
Hey, thank you.